Yesterday, with all this news, no one was focusing on this. Former FBI attorney Lisa Page back on Capitol Hill yesterday afternoon for her second day of testimony. It started on Friday regarding the anti-Trump text messages she was involved in with FBI agent Peter Strzok. House Judiciary Committee member Louie Gohmert was in the room for Page's closed-door hearing. Joins us now with a look inside. He can't give out information that would jeopardize the investigation, but everyone keeps saying that she was a lot more compliant, open, and candid. Would you say the same thing?
Yeah, I would. She was much more forthcoming than Peter Strzok. Some people got upset when I called him out for being the scheming serial liar he is. But let me say this, and it goes with what the president's getting mocked for in Russia. I brought this out, and the mainstream media will not touch it. To me, Fox is the mainstream media, but that is, we know, there is no question, the intelligence community inspector general sent which is Chuck McCulloch, sent his investigator, Frank Rucker, who told Dean Chappelle and Peter Strzok that despite what some of the media was saying, a major foreign power had gotten every one of over 30,000 Hillary Clinton emails through her own server, everything that came and went except for 4. And Peter Strzok did nothing about it. And apparently he didn't tell Lisa what he had learned from the intel community IG. But they sat on that. And the president knows that this foreign entity, not Russia, had everything. You talk about playing in the election.
Right.
It wasn't just Russia. There were other major players. And Strzok did nothing. Lisa apparently didn't know. But
so you're saying another country involved, Congressman. I want to get to Lisa Page.
Yeah.
She's a Democrat. She doesn't like Trump, but she was different. In what way was she different and more forthcoming? What can you tell us you learned?
Well, she's a more contrite person. And but make no mistake, just like you said, Brian, she's a Democrat. She wanted Hillary to win, and she did not want Trump to win. And that's been obvious. There were times the FBI lawyers would be reaching for the button to mute her comment, and she would answer before that they could mute her comment.
Is she contradicting Peter Strzok in any way?
Not so much, but she has given us more insights to who was involved in what. Of course, when I hear Brennan or Clapper either say the kind of things they've been saying recently, then it tells me, wow, we must be getting close to them. Those guilty dogs are barking pretty loud. But I think she'll be a good witness. I don't know that we're going to have a public hearing with her. But the important thing is to continue to gather the evidence. Bob Goodlatte, when we were meeting privately yesterday after the questioning, he's not done. We're going to keep digging until we get to the bottom of this. And it is outrageous.
5-second answer. Are there other supervisors involved besides Peter Strzok?
Yes.
All right. Congressman Gohmert,
yes,
can't wait to find out what those names are. They need to be exposed. Appreciate it.
A Fox News alert, and during an interview with Sean Hannity, President Trump slamming the Russia investigation and Peter Strzok, implying the FBI agent was working with the Obama administration to rig the investigation against him.
We have to find out who did Peter Strzok report to, because it was Comey and it was McCabe, but it was also probably Obama. When you watch Peter Strzok's performance, the lover of Lisa Page, when you watch that performance, the FBI, I'll tell you, I know so many people in the FBI. These are incredible people. What they're going through watching this guy, a total phony.
California Congressman Darrell Issa is a member of the House Judiciary Committee. There's some pretty interesting, maybe explosive charges there from the president. What do you think of them?
Well, I think that if we paraphrase Reagan, trust but verify, the president is doing just that. He trusts the FBI. He trusts the men and women who serve their country loyally. But Peter Strzok is an example of somebody who didn't, who rose to positions of great power and authority, whose own computer, by his own admission under oath, finally, was the computer that downgraded Hillary Clinton's charges from a criminal charge to a choice of words that made it not criminal, and thus allowed Comey to come up and say there's no chargeable offense. We are dealing with a bad actor or a few bad actors there, and it causes all of us to say we cannot blindly trust even our own agencies. We must trust and verify.
Members of Congress are saying that they actually have received more information from Lisa Page's testimony than from Strzok. What do you make of that?
Well, she's a very smart person. She kept herself out of any peril, in my opinion, during her deposition. But she also was very careful. But it was revealing. And I think Mark Meadows and myself and others saw a certain amount of new information that makes us understand the operation. The one thing that's disconcerting, of course, is that, and I'm paraphrasing, her discounting of the importance of their role and her statement that, you know, they couldn't have made any essential differences because there were so many hands and people handling things. That part I don't quite swallow, and under further examination, I think we're going to find, just like that computer, his computer that was used to change that charge, if you will, we're going to find that their hands were on it. Their bias was evident in both the investigations. In
the meantime, there's a letter just out yesterday from Congressman Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan asking Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, to review Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein over the alleged threats that he made. Threats that Catherine Herridge documented in her story, a story that was actually cited in this letter. Right. Threats against House Intel staffers during a meeting in January 2018. In your view, is that warranted?
Absolutely. You know, the executive branch works for Congress. That is literally why we fund them, why we create even the FBI. Chairman Goodlatte reminded him the FBI was created by Congress, not the other way around. And so our oversight and our use of the Inspector General to do his oversight is critical. That kind of misconduct is something that has to be looked at. An implied threat or a real threat, either one is inappropriate when you have that kind of power. You know, and some of it happens every day and is used as a technique. But when it's used against Congress as intimidation, it crosses a line.
Right, because these were ordinary staffers on the Intelligence Committee, and the top law enforcement officer in the nation is essentially threatening to subpoena their emails and their phone records.
Exactly, and he knows very well that their emails and phone records are protected in our branch as communication between us and our staff. We don't take communications between the president and his key staff ever. That's considered protected. So even the threat was inappropriate considering. But the reality is that if you have a chilling effect on the oversight on behalf of the American people by Congress, then who does double check the all-powerful?
I want to ask you for your take on the Russia summit. President Trump is being criticized from the left and from the right to some extent about his statements regarding Russian election meddling. Where do you come down?
Look, Russia is an evil, smaller empire. It's undeniable. His national security team and all parts of government are continuing to sanction Russia and to daily monitor their bad activity. Having said that, the president bravely went out and did what Ronald Reagan did, which is you meet with your adversary/enemy, and you get what you can get that serves the American people. Dealing with Iran, North Korea, and certainly the Syria situation is essential. So I commend him for the meeting. I will expect that there'll be no policy change when it comes to Putin and his gang of thugs that murder each other and that, in fact, are adversaries of the United States. So I think we can have both. I think the president knows that. Certainly, he has never interfered with the national security team's policy of holding Russia accountable, something that is supported by Congress.
I want to get a very quick reaction to something that former federal prosecutor Andrew McCarthy wrote in National Review yesterday. He writes, "We have taken the not only pointless but reckless step of indicting operatives of a foreign hostile power who cannot be prosecuted and whose schemes could easily have been exposed, and in fact have been exposed multiple times in public government reports. So now due process rules oblige us to presume the Russians did not do what we have formally accused them of doing. They're entitled to that presumption unless and until we convict them in court, which is never going to happen." Andrew McCarthy there criticizing Robert Mueller's indictment of those Russian operatives. What do you think?
Well, he's absolutely right. And last night I was with Jonathan Turley, who is also a scholar in these areas. You know, we constantly, on behalf, our CIA would break laws of other countries. We don't turn people over for indictments. And when CIA equivalents in other countries do these things, there's no expectation that that an indictment's appropriate. And so this was a staged event. The American people were influenced by seeing this and taking that next step of it must be real. The fact is that these people, as you said, could have been named at any time. We could probably name lots and lots of their operatives that we know about. But the one thing that's dangerous is that we don't want to name who we know and what they're doing, because that exposes our sources and methods. And so this is a bad policy from an indictment standpoint. It's also bad by exposing what we know or don't know about the adversaries around the world that are spying on us. So on both levels, it's a big mistake.
Congressman Darrell Issa of California, thank you.
All of that coming up, but first, one of the most contentious hearings on Capitol Hill that we've seen in quite some time. FBI agent Peter Strzok faced off against House Republicans last week. Then the other person at the center of the controversy, former FBI lawyer Lisa Page, appearing behind closed doors Friday, and then again, day 2 of her testimony happens tomorrow on Monday. My next guest was one of the select group of lawmakers to question them both, and he had the heated exchange with Strzok, who claims his personal opinions about the president had no impact on his professional conduct.
Of the approximately 50,000 text messages that I've seen with your personal beliefs like F Trump, stop Trump, impeach Trump, go ahead and confirm on the record that none of that occurred on an official FBI device or on official FBI time. Go ahead and do that.
Sir, no, they did. Many of them did.
Oh, they did. Okay, so
50,000, sir.
So really, no, I'll give you a chance at the end. So what you really meant to say was that when you said you never crossed that bright, inviolable line, what you meant to say was, except for 50,000 times. I'm sure there are 13,000 FBI agents out there that are beaming with pride at how clearly you've drawn that line. Do you see why that might call into question everything you've touched on all of those investigations?
And that, of course, was Congressman John Ratcliffe. He is a member of the House Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees. He is also a former federal prosecutor himself. Congressman, it is good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
You bet. Thanks, Maria.
And nice work there, getting to the heart of the issue in terms of him using his personal devices to trash the president. So at this point, you have interviewed Peter Strzok in that very contentious and public hearing. You have spoken with Lisa Page on Friday, and you will do that again tomorrow for day 2 of her testimony. What have we learned?
Well, it was a bit of a circus atmosphere, as you saw, Maria, on Wednesday, and it's easy to lose the forest for the trees. But the most important takeaway, I think, is for people to remember that if the special counsel ever decides to bring any Russia collusion-related charges against anyone associated with the Trump campaign, to include Donald Trump, then Peter Strzok has to be a star witness. He has to be a star witness because he was in charge of the Russia investigation. He started it. He ran it for the first year. He collected all of the evidence. So his credibility is of primary importance. And that's why if you were listening at the hearing, it may have seemed like there were 2 different Peter Strzok's in the room. The Democrats talked about a Peter Strzok who they characterized as a patriot and a hero and someone deserving of a Purple Heart. The Peter Strzok that I questioned is a disgraced FBI agent who has been demoted by the FBI, is being investigated by the FBI for misconduct, for those types of text messages that really call into question how much he hated Donald Trump at the same time that he was investigating Donald Trump. So look, you know, as a former federal prosecutor, the government can't walk into a courtroom with Peter Strzok as a star witness. Within 10 minutes of seeing these texts, the jurors would have reasonable doubt in their minds. So that's the credibility of Peter Strzok and Lisa Page will be of primary importance to ultimately what people think of the special counsel's findings.
So you think this hearing and just his performance, there was arrogance, there was pushback, obstructing, not answering some questions. You think that pokes holes in his credibility as a star witness for the special prosecutor?
Well, I certainly didn't find him credible, and I think most American people would say, if I'm the subject of an investigation, would I want this guy investigating me at the same time he's sending 50,000 text messages, many of which talk about how much he hates me?
Yeah.
Remember, one of the text messages, Maria, less than a week after he was put in charge of the Russia investigation, he said he was going to protect the country from the menace of Donald Trump, that he was going to stop Trump from being president. He talked about an insurance policy. That alone really raises reasonable doubt and real questions about the validity of any evidence that he collected in this investigation, which became the special counsel probe.
Has there been a difference in the answers that he gave versus what Lisa Page told you yesterday and what she might tell you tomorrow?
So I can't get into the content of the testimony from Lisa Page yet. What I can tell you is that Congressman Gowdy and I had 2 hours to question her on Friday. I can tell you that there are significant differences in her testimony from Agent Strzok as it relates to these text messages, what she thought some of them meant. And she gave us new information that he either wouldn't or couldn't, that confirms some of the concerns that we have about these investigations and the people involved in running them.
Let me ask you specifically.
We'll continue.
Go ahead.
Well, and we'll continue her deposition on Monday, and then after that, we'll have additional witnesses that come in. So we're going to keep the pressure on, Maria.
Give me your reaction to the 12 additional indictments that we saw this weekend by Rod Rosenstein. Obviously, they are indicting these 12 Russians for meddling in the 2016 election.
Well, so if you're keeping track of the numbers, I think that makes 25 or 26 Russians indicted for meddling in our election. But it's 0 Russians indicted for colluding with Americans, and it's 0 Americans indicted for colluding with Russians. So all of this goes to prove what many of us that have seen every classified document have been saying, which is that there is no evidence of collusion. But as a former U.S. attorney and as a former terrorism prosecutor and national security lawyer, I got to tell you, Maria, it's a really curious way about going about an investigation if you're serious. Typically, when you've got defendants in foreign jurisdictions, you don't hold a public press conference and announce it if you ever have any intention of prosecuting them. The indictments should have remained sealed until you could lure those defendants to a jurisdiction from which they could be extradited, arrested, and then unseal the indictments. So it really seems like, from my perspective, this is more about the special counsel trying to justify the work that they're doing and their existence, rather than really trying to seriously prosecute folks that were trying to meddle in our election.
Because at the end of the day, we don't have jurisdiction over them, and they're not going to be prosecuted. We can't.
Well, that's exactly right, Maria. And the other problem with this is these types of cases, U.S. attorneys can handle them. Lawyers from the criminal division, National Security Division at Maine Justice can handle these cases. We don't need a special counsel. Remember, the special counsel's mandate is links and coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and there's not a word of that in any of these indictments.
Really, really fascinating.